So I'd love to open up by helping us get a sneak peek into the book. Is there a that you learned from them that has stayed with you after you've written the book, and do share with us that experience?
No, absolutely. Thank you, Amit, first of all, for having me here, and thank you, Nikhil, for that, lovely introduction. Am I audible? Yeah, okay. So clearly, before I even come to the person, I just want to talk a little bit about the philosophy, since the time is really short, if that's okay.
Of course.
Yeah. My whole philosophy of storm the norm, and that's the reason why the title becomes important, and it's not norming the storms, because you need to storm it and then you need to norm it. Okay, normalize it. First you need to challenge it. Okay, once you've challenged, you've created a storm, a stir, then you create a new normal, and then that new normal is then normalized. So then you norm the storm, but first you need to storm it. And the whole principle with which I have, Nikhil, worked is that if you actually just follow the stereotypes, last night Nikhil and I were talking, and he just said, even in PR industry, okay, there are so many stereotypes. There's so many stereotypes. And he was saying, when we look at recruitment and hiring, every industry has this target on diversity now. Hire that many women. Now, there are certain roles which just get automatically tick marked as yahan pe to don't even consider men. It should only be a women. And Copcom is one of them, by the way. And he admitted that, And now that's a norm. That's a stereotype. Okay, that's where it all begins. I was just Googling in the morning. There's so many stereotypes around public relations. Okay, the worst one is PR is like spin doctors. Okay, they're spin doctors. They can spin a yarn around anything and twist the facts, which is so weird. Okay, then there's a norm which says that public relations, you need to be an extrovert to be a PR person, but the best PR people are the ones who can actually not just be extrovert. So there are stereotypes everywhere, and that's what really bothers me, that if you actually go by the stereotypes, the norms, what you do is you try and get better than the norm. So my first book was Storm the Norm, which was about 20 businesses that challenged the stereotypes. Each one of them, the fact that they have created success is because they questioned a stereotype and they overcome it. Whether it is Tata Tea, or whether it is ITC Fiamma Devils, or whether it's a PVR, Make My Trip, and there are some really amazing stories, MTR, whatever. So the diverse industries, but each one of them had actually not followed the norms, because if you follow a norm, you become better than somebody else. If you question the norms, you create a new space for yourself. So that was the starting point. My firm, my podcast, everything just works on that. Then when COVID came, there was this total conversation about men and women both working from home. And every time you were, part of many women conversations and groups, that women are getting the short end of the stick, when both working people are at home, but it is generally women who get the short end of the stick. And that's what actually I was thinking, and we of course had time on hand, and I said, let me write about gender stereotypes, which is a very, very common theme. So yeah, so now coming to your question, there's 17 women. They're not corporate women, by the way, not all of them. There are some. There is Sugar Cosmetics Vinita, there is Lavanya Nalli, the Nalli saris, fourth generation family business, they never wanted, in a sari business, they never wanted a woman in the family business. So there are people like those. Dipali Goenka, she comes from a family of royalty. She was not allowed to enter kitchen. So there were all of them, when they've succeeded, runs, wife of the chairman of a company, and the fact that what she needs to do to prove herself and to prove her worth, all those kinds of corporate women are there. But the one that really stands out is this rocket women of India. Ritu Karadiyal, the first movie Mangalyaan was made on her, and that story is about a small town girl from Lucknow, okay, gets married. No, doesn't get. I mean, this is before marriage. How, you know, she wanted to be a doctor, typical thing. Women should be girls should be doctors, you know, at that point in time. How she actually went into science. And we say tough jobs, another stereotype, tough jobs are not for women. You know, women should not be in manufacturing. Women should not be in industrial jobs. Women can't do sales jobs, you know, all those kinds of things. So she really stands out for me, because when you read her story, it's very inspiring in the way she actually overcome every single challenge that came her way. And one thing that I want to point out about many of these women is that they did that by being in the ecosystem. They did not behave like activists. They did not behave like, you know, I will not have a family, or I will do it at the cost of this. They've been part of normal lives. They have adjusted and compromised. There is no such thing as that there is no compromise. There's an equal compromise from both sides, you know, whatever. But they've managed to succeed, you know, and challenge the stereotype. So that comes to my mind. There is a para-athlete, Ekta Bhayan, a gold medalist, was coming to Delhi for her medical exam, met with a road accident. You know, she lost her legs and she only had hands. Changed to training, and she's a gold medalist in discus throw. So some very interesting and inspiring stuff there.
Thank you for sharing that. The next question that comes to my mind is, on a practical level, I don't think anybody can disagree with the fact that diversity is beneficial for organizations, right? So there's enough research to prove that better decisions are made in not just gender diverse teams, but in overall diverse teams. You have far more insight. So I don't think conceptually there is a lack of acceptance of that anymore. But what is it that any one of us in the room can practically do to either break an unconscious bias or to just be a champion? And I'll give you an example that I learned actually from, again, Mr. Prabhu over here. He brought to my attention the concept of manels, right? Manels are panel discussions which have only men. And that's a really small but significant thing which wasn't in my consciousness, where I now, whenever I'm invited, A, I check, and B, I ask organizers that if I find that there are only men, I ask them, can we not find other voices? Now, it's a very small thing, but it's something that I feel is practical and doable. Yeah. So like that, is there something that in your discovery you can share with this group that not just men, but overall as corporate leaders, we can be champions of?
So see, the big things, Nikhil, like I said, are happening. Okay. Now, at least from the time when, you know, when we started off, which was many, many years back, today corporates are very conscious. So crashes, flexi hours, maternity leaves, sometimes, you know, in fact, it's becoming counterproductive. Women in smaller companies are coming and saying, please, you know, don't give us those kind of long maternity leaves, because then it comes as a barrier to hiring. Because in small companies, there's just one role, one person per role. Okay, and then what happens is, you know that if you're hiring a person who's newly married and might get into the family way, the whole mindset, and I've seen that in companies where I have worked, the whole mindset is, well, she, you know, and they're asking these questions in interviews, how do you want to, you know, get to the family way? And they'll not hire because they said, ye to 6 mahine, now maternity leaves is 6 months and you can take another few months without pay and stuff like that. So women are saying, there's women, and some women saying, don't give us, you know, we can go without pay if we have to. So I'm saying some of these, when we actually, again, stereotype or templatize some of these, this thing, then that works for some, doesn't work for some, you know. When you say manels and start having a women, you know, if you find a good diverse voice, okay, by all means, you know, bring that person in. But the minute you make it a rule and say, no, every panel needs to have a woman, like they've done it in the case of boards, you know, at something that has to happen at a national level, it, you know, enforcement helps. Okay, but something that has to happen at a corporate level, I think if we can do it as part of our cultural change that we bring in organizations. I was speaking, these many sessions that I've been doing diversity in corporates, unconscious biases is where it really, these are these small daily cuts that hurt. There's I was in a similar session like this in a corporate, and they said every time, she's the only woman in the leadership team, and she says every time there is birthday celebrations and we get the cake in the conference room, somehow just say, Sneha, why don't you come forward, cut the cake? I mean, typically, there's nothing wrong with that. I would love to do that if somebody tells me to cut the cake. I'm a homemaker, and I love doing these things. But there are some women who say, but that's so unfair. Every time Sneha is supposed to cut the cake, why can't one of the guys cut the cake? And now these are, who is it? It hurts somebody, it doesn't hurt somebody. These are the kind of things that really start bothering. Amit, I was at that golf club launch when we had these conversations. CEO of Dabur, Mr. Sunil Duggal, and we were asking for examples, comes up to me and he tells me, when I started Dabur, we started from Safdarjung Enclave office, and we had around 20 employees, around 19 of them men, only one women, and we had 5 loos. Okay, now imagine 1 loo reserved for a lady, and there were 2 loos between 20 of them, or 1 loo between the rest 19 of them. There were only 2 loos. So he goes to Mr. Barman, and he says that, this is like, there's a big queue outside men, and there's now one just getting reserved only for women. There's 1 woman. What do we do? You know what the response was? Let her go. Release her. No, say it sounds shocking, but it's practical, no? Because that's the kind of real estate that is, at that point in time, it was the wisdom. And there's such amazing stories that emerge. If I open up, and since the time is short, really we need to talk about these. Many of you will have these kind of stories to share about the unconscious biases that you face in your workplace. Okay, I sit at boards, and there's a lady who really dresses up well for board meetings. She wears good jewelry. She comes, wearing jewelry and all. I have a male colleague who just retired from that board, and we were just having coffee, and there is this whole thing of, look at the amount of distraction in the boardroom. You must be really, you have that eye to feel distracted, but it's real. It happens every day. It's so real. This conversation is so real. So for me, I think the more women come up, and come up with these small unconscious biases that they face, and we talk about it, and that becomes a cultural change in an organization. I think that's when the real change will happen.
Thank you. So we are about midway into our conversation, so I do want to get audience questions in, as I did get a chance to talk with her one-on-one last night, so I'm not going to hog all the questions. So I'm going to open it up right now. Yes, we've got a hand right.
This is Priya here from Invesco. Anisha, like you rightly said, the conversations are very much, in the corridors of the corporate, where we talk about, inclusion and stuff. But we also face a challenge where it becomes like a checkbox. You have to hire, and that's when, and I'm taking the liberty. A lot of people here would have faced that, where it goes away from hiring merit-based, but because you have to check in the box and you have to have that number of inclusion to go to the board as well. So what's your take around that? Because I think that in the long run actually demeans rather than doing something good about and bringing that ratio up.
So you're absolutely right. There are targets. And especially and most of the targets are being fulfilled at either junior levels or for certain roles, because nobody is saying let's get X number of people in sales. Okay, now that for me is, real kind of a change approach that you need. Or let's get more women in manufacturing. So in the book, say for example, I covered the MG Motors story. Okay, and there's only one corporate story that we've covered, because I was in General Motors, which then later has now become, the whole team is the same, MG Motors. Because when I used to go to Halol, the manufacturing plant, I used to be the only women at the manufacturing plant. I was director marketing in that company, and there were no other women except for women who were doing admin jobs. Now, when they brought about change, they actually started with recruit in a place like Halol, which is Baroda, small town, women in manufacturing, and all women crew making Hector, the SUV that men love to drive. I mean, women also drive SUV. That's another stereotype, by the way. There are more women driving SUVs, than men. All women crew making these macho cars, okay, right from paints to metal to, heavy, this thing, these days lifting is not there because everything has now become robotized and automated. And they actually started with recruiting at the ground level, college, training them, skilling them, bringing them to the fore, bringing them at a mid-management level, and then all the 9 yards. Despite that, I did a large diversity project for MG Motors. Despite that, having done everything, when you talk to women, they say we are not allowed to go for test drives. Okay, because, so I said, that's very strange. You've made these cars, you have manufactured this piece, you need to test how it works. So then they say that, the reason that you hear is, they think that test drives is on rough terrains. You have to test drive a new car on all kinds of terrains. 3 days of being on, in mountains, in deserts, here and there. And the reason why, we are not allowed is because there will be no loose infrastructure on the way, and nighttime driving, day driving, whatever, and because there are no loose, and and there are safety concerns at night in these rough terrains, we are not allowed to test drive. So we can make, but we are not allowed to test drive. Now, I don't know what's right or what's wrong in this, because women said we are willing to take the risk. Okay, we will find this thing, we don't mind. But HR is saying that, God forbid if something were to happen, even to one person, the media will just kill us. Okay, now that's the two sides of the same story. So what is right and what is not so right, somehow we look at it with a unidimensional lens to say, yeah, if they're making, they should also test drive. Now, can we create shorter test drives for them, or day test drives for them? Does it come at a cost? What does it do to unit economics? All those kind of practical considerations come into the picture. So yeah, it's a tightrope walk, it's a slow walk, but I guess it needs to be customized to, making it a cultural change in an organization rather than a long answer to a very short question. Sorry, Priya.
Hi, Anisha. Piali from Axis Bank. So one small observation here. You very rightly said that it's difficult to balance it out. I mean, we can take steps, but it may become too much, or it may not really do the, we may not meet the objective that we had initially. See, one program that we have in our organization, which really worked well over the last couple of years, is that at least one woman in each team. We realize that there are teams where not even a single woman is there. So even a target such as that, it is not like you have to take several women, but at least one woman in each team, and that starts it off.
Yes.
And then there is an entire chain and a cycle to it.
Yes.
So probably something like that would also help in certain cases.
That's a great share. That's an absolutely great share.
So you, and then after that, one.
Yeah, hi. Hi, Anisha. Sanaj Natarajan. I'm with Vaptec. So there's you touched upon some interesting points, and what I would say, just I'll quote something, it's like God giveth, priest blocketh. So one example here is the HR, which does the blocking point and everything. So that is there. There is many multinationals, okay, huge multinationals, let's assume the MAGA companies, they also are not following the norm. So where do you break the barrier? It's good, communications is aware and about it and everything, but how do you convince an HR which might be doing the tick boxing here?
I think, see, there is facts and data that is available today, which is saying that wherever there is diversity, and not just gender diversity, there could be cultural diversity, there could be demographic diversity. You know, if you have people from North India and South India, you know, I mean, even that kind of diversity is not there. For the moment, there's so much attention around gender diversity. I think the issue really is also there needs to be a step forward from both sides. You know, women also need to raise hands, in the sense that you do see real challenges in women dropping out at, you know, what we call as the camel's hump. The minute they come closer to leadership positions, that is when they start believing, I can't take the pressure anymore. And also because women's job is a second job in the family, okay, women take that liberty of saying, but I'm not working for money. Many women will start feeling that thing, I'm not working for money, I'm working for passion. Okay, and they don't take their career seriously. So that also is another break point where women themselves are giving up and proving time and again that, you know, that there isn't enough talent left at that second layer level. So I think that is something that is important, and data and facts that wherever we've managed to get women in the teams, you know, the business unit economics and productivity has been far, far better. It's been proven time and again. Google is full of it. I think that's the only way it will work, or then change your HR head. Get a person, seriously, get a person who really believes in the cause and is passionate about, you know, doing something.
Yes, Madam.
Anisha, this is a little personal question for you.
Yeah.
There was a time until which you were a advertising profession,
yes,
professional, a marketing professional, a digital professional, or a combination of all of them. And then one day you got into an orbital shift called a board. Called the board of directors. Independent board member somewhere. And then one thing led to the other. Was that an inflection point in your overall evolution?
So Matan, that's a very interesting question. See, people ask me from backroom to boardroom. I mean, I have a backroom background, you know, I mean, in the sense that, in many ways it did, because I was not able to, you know, operating, and different people have different DNA. I mean, my DNA was operating within the boundary conditions of an org structure, and this is the right way to do this, you know, and just being within the structure and framework. I don't think I was getting the kind of, you know, potential that, you know, I wanted to write, I wanted to do podcasts, I wanted to do, you know, I wanted to speak. And sometimes, you know, people would say, okay, without taking names, somebody says, I built a great brand, I got recognized. Somebody actually came and told me, oh, but you also, in the process, you're building your own brand too. You know, I mean, you're building your own brand, you know, while you're building the company's brand, you know, because I was speaking at conferences and I was, you know, I was here and there. And then I said, you know, I think time has come to actually, you know, start off on my own, and by which time I had enough credibility of good work. And the whole starting point of leaving Madan is that what you want to, how much are you willing to give up? Because when you give up at senior levels, there's a lot you have to give up. But yes, absolutely right. For me, that was the turning point.
Just have one follow-up question. This whole profession of communications is craving for a seat on the table in the boardroom. Always that's our wish, that I want to be on the seat, I'm capable.
Yeah.
And yet there is some missing link somewhere.
Yeah.
Supposing all of us trained, there's a training available. The Institute of Directors does it, KPMG does it, and many other people do it. Supposing all of us said by end of next year or end of this year, we'll all be trained for a directorship position in a board. Will that make us more acceptable to the boards?
So,
even the training.
The training, see, it all depends on there are lots of trainings that are happening. There are first thing that is going to be the most important thing is, even if you've trained, okay, the domain expertise, okay, that needs to shine through, in the sense, because there are today, by the way, even in the case of women, there's more supply than demand. When I started off, there was more demand and less supply. Okay, today there is enough supply. All of us, you ask any women I ask, every day they're saying they've been trained and they want to get on the boards. It definitely is a tick mark. Definitely is a tick mark, because rather than for a fresh person, it really helps to have some kind of
understanding of how the board functions
and risks of the board and audit functions of the board. Generally, the belief is that marketing, copcom, these kind of people are not very good at
this kind of understanding risk,
which is what the core job of the board is: governance, compliance, those kind of things. So training helps. I took that exam, the Directors Institute exam. Now they've diluted it, but when I took it, you had to clear it with first 60% plus. It was quite tough, Madan. Even after being on the board for 3-4 years, I took it during COVID time. That exam was quite tough in terms of the acts, the Companies Act, the various regulations that are around it. So yes, academic information and theoretical information will help, definitely help.
Thank you, that's all.
Thank you. So we have, I think, time for about 2 more questions. Okay, then we have...
Hi Anisha, this is Sarvesh from Tata Steel. So, I'm referring to the point that you made earlier, where, if you have a lady in the team, how the productivity goes up. So, we have in our mining locations, we have those heavy earth moving equipments, 50 tonners. So we recruited 28 or 30 of these young women, trained them on, and the impact has been absolutely, because first is to get into those mining areas and drive those. Those vehicles are as big as this room. And what has happened is that the productivity has gone up, the per hour, the kind of output has gone up. So that has changed. And one good way to change the mindset is to have the head of HR being a lady. And she's kind of, we have one unit of firefighters who are all women.
Awesome.
And in a steel company. So how do you break that barrier, which is steel is seen as a category which is male dominated?
Very male dominated.
So those kind of snippets would help us to,
HR plays a huge role. I was talking to an HR head in a promoter-driven company.
Volume, please. Volume.
I was talking to an HR head in a promoter-driven company. Huge group. India is one of the largest groups, multiple, not just India, global group. But they are saying, the poor HR guy, with his best intents, is not able to move the needle, because finally the decision maker is the promoter. But if you have groups like Tata and all, where you have so much professional, freedom given to professionals, you can set the example. Once you've done it, I'm sure, some of the other traditional steel companies might just get the learning from there. Awesome.
So, great observations, and just wanted to add to what he's saying. Of course, you must be knowing about Hindustan Unilever's the Shakti Amma movement and how we empower women. My question is a little different. I'm just taking from you the idea of storming a norm. What are your thoughts about women and ageism? Because that I am seeing probably around, I'm also getting to that age, and therefore I'm seeing a lot of that also happening. I don't know whether it's similar for men, and maybe some people in the room can kind of add to that, but I definitely see a lot of ageism in senior leadership amongst women. So what are your thoughts about that?
And when you mean ageism, does it impact because you go through the menopausal impacts?
No, that is definitely one side of it. Okay. But the thing is that giving a woman a role because of her age or not because of her age, I think that kind of conversation, does it limit your progress? Is that something where you hit a glass ceiling?
To be honest, that's an interesting one. I haven't, in my conversations or personally, haven't experienced it so far, that age has become a barrier. It is in fact more in terms of women themselves, giving it up because they feel that, they'll not be able to. So the CEO's job is not for women. I've suffered from that stereotype that the corner office is too tough for me. And each time I came close to, in 3 different industries, I came very close to the MD position. I was at the penultimate position, and the minute I came close, I would give up and I would switch the industry. And then in hindsight, I realized that, probably that was my own doing, whatever. So probably, but do corporates, at least it hasn't come to my notice, but if it's come to your notice, do share it. I mean, there are many people in the room here. If you all have experienced it, and if there's something that you would like to share, it would be good to hear.
Yeah, so something to talk about in our next break.